Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into an absolutely epic story that stretches across 3 millennia, the history of Israel and Jerusalem. It's a journey that's really defined by these powerful cycles of exile and return, of destruction and then restoration. And this cycle has been shaping the land and its people for thousands of years.
So, our journey is going to take us through the rise and fall of ancient kingdoms, the decrees of powerful emperors, and even the modern political decisions that are still shaping this region today. But at its heart, this is really the story of a people, a land, and one single city that's been at the center of it all.
All right, let's start way back in the ancient world. We're going to look at the foundational stories of a people who were repeatedly exiled from their land and their incredibly powerful drive to come back. This whole cycle of being displaced and then finding a way to restore themselves is absolutely key to understanding everything that comes next.
Okay, so think of this as our roadmap for this first era. We're looking at a period of about 200 years that saw two different massive empires conquer the land. This led to the destruction of the first temple, but as you'll see, it also set the stage for its eventual reconstruction. Our story really kicks off with this pivotal date, 722 BCE. This is the moment when the powerful Assyrian Empire finished its conquest of the northern kingdom of Israel. And this one event would permanently, and I mean permanently, change the makeup of the entire region. So what happened? Well, under these Assyrian kings, 10 of the 12 tribes were exiled and just scattered across the empire. They became known to history as the Lost Tribes of Israel, a concept that has fascinated people for centuries. And in their place, the Assyrians moved in other people they'd conquered, and their descendants would eventually become the Samaritans.
All right, fast forward just over a century, and another empire, Babylon, is on the rise. Under their king, Nebuchadnezzar II, the southern kingdom of Judah faced its own series of exiles. And these didn't happen all at once. They came in these distinct, painful waves.
So first, in 605 BCE, the Babylonians took the elite youth, including famous figures like Daniel. Then, a few years later, a much larger deportation, the royal family, skilled workers, even the prophet Ezekiel. And then the final devastating blow came in 586 BCE. Jerusalem was conquered, and the magnificent First Temple, the absolute center of Jewish worship, was completely destroyed. But, even in the middle of all this devastation, a really powerful message of resilience came through. The prophet Jeremiah told the exiles in Babylon not to rebel, but to actually build new lives and, quote, seek the peace of the city where they now lived. It was a pretty remarkable strategy for survival when you think about it. And then, wow, the whole political chessboard gets flipped. The Persian Empire, led by Cyrus the Great, rolls in and conquers Babylon. And in a move that was just unheard of at the time, Cyrus issues a decree that allows all the exiled peoples, including the Jews, to go back to their homelands and rebuild their temples. A total game changer. So you jump ahead about 2 decades from Cyrus's decree, and we land here in 516 BCE. This year is huge. It's the culmination of everything that first wave of returnees had been working towards. And here it is. This is the moment it all comes together. A new generation, led by guys like Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest, finishes building the second temple on the exact same spot as the first. The spiritual heart of the nation was back. But, this period of relative freedom under the Persians, it wasn't going to last. A whole new series of empires was on the horizon, and that was going to lead to a new era of conflict, some really violent revolts, and ultimately another absolutely catastrophic destruction. So here's our next roadmap. We're going from the arrival of the Greeks all the way to the iron fist of the Roman Empire. This period is really defined by a clash of cultures and a desperate fight for independence. And it features 2 major revolts and one of the most devastating events in all of Jewish history. First up, the Greeks. Alexander the Great's conquest just swept through the Persian Empire, bringing Judea into what we call the Hellenistic world. And this was so much more than just a change of rulers. This was a full-on culture clash, an infusion of Greek language, philosophy, and ways of life that created some really deep tensions within Jewish society. And those tensions, they eventually just exploded into rebellion. It's really interesting to compare the 2 big ones. The first, the Maccabean Revolt, was against a Greek kingdom and was sparked when they desecrated the temple. That one was actually successful. They purified the temple and even founded their own dynasty. But the second revolt,
against the full might of the Roman Empire, that was a total disaster. It was brutally crushed, and as a result, Jews were banned from even entering Jerusalem.
But hang on, before we even get to that second revolt, we have to talk about this year, 70 CE. This date represents a massive, profound trauma, an event whose consequences would echo for nearly 2,000 years. So what happened? Well, after a major Jewish revolt against Roman rule, the Roman general Titus, who would later become emperor, laid siege to Jerusalem. The city fell, and the Second Temple, it was burned and completely destroyed. This wasn't just a military defeat. It marked the end of the temple-based worship that had been the center of everything for centuries, and it triggered the beginning of a long, widespread diaspora that scattered the Jewish people across the globe. Okay, so now we're going to take a huge leap forward in time. We're jumping through many, many centuries of this diaspora, a time when Jewish communities existed all over the world without a homeland, all the way to the rise of a modern political movement in the 19th century that aimed to change that reality for good. So, how did this happen? Well, you can really break down the path to a modern state into a few key steps. It all started with an idea put into words by Theodor Herzl, who championed Zionism, a political movement for a Jewish homeland. That idea got a huge boost with the Balfour Declaration from Great Britain. Then, tragically, the absolute horror of the Holocaust created a global consensus that a safe haven was necessary. And that all culminated in a 1947 UN vote to partition the land, which was then under British control. And that UN vote, it leads directly to this moment, the year the modern state of Israel was born. Right there in Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion reads the Declaration of Independence, formally establishing the modern state of Israel. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, a sovereign Jewish state was a reality in the ancestral land. All right, for our final section, let's zoom in specifically on Jerusalem. We're talking about a city whose status as a capital is as ancient as it is contested in our modern world. This table really shows you the long, long history here. The claim starts way back, around 3,000 years ago, when King David made Jerusalem his capital. Now, let's fast forward to the modern era. In 1949, Israel declared Jerusalem its capital. Other huge moments include the unification of the city after the 1967 Six-Day War, and more recently, the official recognition by the United States back in 2017.
So, from an ancient royal city to a modern, deeply contested capital, Jerusalem has just remained this incredible focal point of history, faith, and conflict. After 3 millennia, its story is clearly still being written, right? Which really just leaves us all with one big question. What's the next chapter going to hold?